So I'm happy to welcome Carol Shrader. I offered to give her a whole bunch of fancy letters behind her name, but she didn't want them. But I think the fact that she's a mom of triplets, two of whom have CP, probably gives her enough credentials to come up here and chat with us. So Carol's going to come up and talk about transitions.
Thanks. I actually almost put all their initials behind my name just so it wouldn't look quite so bare. But I feared you would find me out. Okay, so I don't have fancy letters behind my name, but as Brenda said, I do have triplets. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what transition has looked like for us as we have launched them into adulthood. First, I'm going to back up, if I can work everything, and tell you that when you have 3 babies, when they reach their first birthday, 3 babies turn 1. So we went to the pediatrician, and she calmly looked at me and said, "How are they doing with solid food?" And I looked at her, and I looked at the babies, and I looked back at her, and I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I have a routine. I know exactly how many bottles I have to make the night before I go to bed to last me to the next evening. I know who likes what baby food. I know how much cereal I need to prepare. It has never occurred to me to try solid food, ever." She kind of highly encouraged me to go home and make grilled cheese sandwiches and see what happened. And Mason, the one in the red bib, ate 3 entire grilled cheese sandwiches by himself. So what I'm here to tell you is I am the perfect person to talk about transitions, as apparently I do it very well. Not delayed at all. Last week, my 19-year-old son, Benjamin, was going to college, and his battery on his wheelchair was in the mid-zone, right? It was in the orange zone. He still had half a battery, but I cautioned him anyway. I said, "Benjamin, when you're not moving, turn it off, because you've got a long day today, and I don't want your battery to die." But I wasn't really worried. We'd had the wheelchair for 1.5 years. It had never, ever died completely. So I go to pick him up that evening after a day of classes and an event. He got halfway up the ramp on the van, and the battery started flashing low battery. Can y'all talk with me? If it flashes low battery, wouldn't you think it would still go? Well, it doesn't. At least not the Permobil, whatever, that he drives. It stopped completely. I tried to push, nothing happened. I tried to turn it on and off again, because that's how you make things work, right? We just turn it on and off again. Nothing happened. We were getting nothing. He is panicked. He's saying, "How am I going to get home if I can't get into the van?" And I've got my iPhone trying to find the light switch so that I can see where the manual switches are on this wheelchair that we've never, ever used, not even once. I found the switches, 2 of them. And do you know what happened when I activated them? He rolled backwards all the way down the van. We lost all the progress we had gained. I thought that ramp was almost flat. Right up until that night, I had to push the 300-pound wheelchair and my Benjamin up into the van. I was panting, I was shoving, I was pushing, and I was going, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can." And of course we did. We did. He got home safe. He's fine. What I'm here today to tell you is that transitioning our children with cerebral palsy into adulthood is a lot like pushing that 300-pound wheelchair and my Benjamin up a steep ramp. It's going to take a lot of switches that we may not know where they're located. We may need some outside illumination to show us where they exist. And we may have to use every single ounce of "I think I can" that we can find. Today we're going to talk about all 3 of my kids a little bit. Benjamin and Mason and Claire are all sophomores in college. They all successfully finished their first year. They're all diligently working through their second. Claire, the one triplet without cerebral palsy, goes to a college about 30 minutes from home. She's a great student. She calls home periodically, pretty often, or she texts me almost daily, usually with a funny story, sometimes for emotional support. Mason, my triplet with spastic diplegic cerebral palsy, he uses the forearm crutches to walk. We call them power sticks at our house. We have since he was a little bitty boy. He goes to a college about 15 miles away. He lives on campus independently. He serves the student body as a senator. He's a resident assistant for the freshman dorm. Things that he chose to do because he really struggled emotionally with his freshman year, and he wants to help other kids if they struggle. He doesn't call home as much as he did last year. He called home a lot last year. But when he does call home, it can be for emotional issues or physical issues, or, the important things like which bow tie goes with which shirt. And I have to respond. Benjamin, my triplet that has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, lives at home. He lives with his dad and his younger sister and I, and he attends a college also 15 miles away, a different college, because, heaven forbid they would have all picked the same college. I mean, that would have just been right. He commutes every day. So for the last year, I've served as his personal shuttle driver. I've served as his personal care attendant. I've brought him home and helped him with homework, and then I've driven him back so that he can do college things at night. And then I've driven him back home and put him to bed. It's why you see gray hair, and it's why there's these bags under my eyes. I'm way too old to be a college student, but he's enjoying himself. Transitioning to adulthood, though, required a lot more than the switches to tell you that we have accomplished so far in picking colleges. Mason is obviously physically more independent. But he is the triplet that has the longest list of medical issues. So for him, transitioning into adulthood meant we had to find the right doctors to manage his high blood pressure that he has from a resulting kidney anomaly. We had to find doctors to manage his ulcerative colitis. We had to find doctors to manage his cerebral palsy. All new doctors, because now that he's an adult, we weren't able to be seen by the pediatricians who had formerly managed those. Moving into adulthood for Mason meant that I had to equip him to manage his own medications. He takes a lot, and I thought I'd been working on that for the last couple of years. Mason, don't forget to take your meds tonight. That's on you. Or when he would wake up in the morning, Mason, did you take your meds? What I failed to teach him was when to call in the refills. So we had more than one mom-son terse conversation as he would call and say, hey, I am out of my meds and I need a refill. Well, how long have you been out of your meds? Well, last week. It's only been about a week. So this was a switch, right, that I failed to help him prepare for. It was a thing that he needs desperately as he transitions into adulthood to be able to take care of himself. Once Mason chose his college, we attended a parent-son weekend, a parent-student weekend, and I was meeting with administrators and I was had lots of questions like, what will this look like for Mason? This is what I think he's gonna need to succeed. And I began to list this long list of supports I thought they needed to be in place, and could they provide that? And the administrator was so kind as he walked me across campus, and he patiently smiled at me and said yes and nodded. And then he met Mason and he said, Mason, I understand what your mom thinks you need to succeed, but I really wanna know what you think you need to succeed. It was kind of my first hint that I was going to be pushed out of the way. Mason has called me for fashion choices a lot this year, but as far as his academic career is concerned, he manages that completely on his own because of an administrator who gave him the illumination, if you will, who gave him the voice to say, this is up to you and what you want to do. He's kind of cute, right? Benjamin's academic and personal care needs are a lot more intense. They are, and we have to work a lot harder. His independence looks different. His college experience looks different than mine did. It looks different than his siblings. It is different. It just is. And remember that sometimes when you think you have all the switches, remember with my wheelchair, I thought I had the switches, but we rolled right backwards. Sometimes with Benjamin's transition to adulthood, we thought we had all the switches in place, only to have him roll right backwards. We were about 3 weeks before school started when he began vomiting uncontrollably. An hour went into 6 hours, and he had turned clammy and pale, and we were in a new city, and I had no idea where to take him. Does he go to the children's hospital, or does he go to the adult hospital? And I vacillated for a little while, knowing this was an emergency, but having no idea, because it's part of it. Our children are better seen by pediatricians when they have special needs. So we went to the children's hospital, but in a very wise move, they assigned us a team of doctors from the medicine pediatric team. I'm going to tell you that the MedPeds team are the best team to help you with transitioning your child into adulthood. They've trained both in medicine and they've trained in pediatrics, so they're very aware of dealing with special needs and early onset childhood illnesses. So we found a wonderful team of docs. And it was with this team that we went to a recent follow-up appointment, and Benjamin was expressing that he was having some pain and stiffness, and the doctor looked at him and said, "Do you think physical therapy would help?" And she asked Benjamin, not me, and Benjamin said yes. And she said, "Great. Go out the door. I'm going to write your prescription. The physical therapist is down the hall. You head that way." We walked out of that room, Benjamin rolling beside me. I was feeling pretty good, like, it's my kid. It's like all independent. He told her what he needed, and now we're getting it, and we know what physical therapy looks like. This is a switch I'm familiar with, right? We'd been doing physical therapy since they were 9 months old, except when we got to the receptionist's desk. She stuttered all over herself. She spit. She wouldn't make eye contact before she finally told us that they didn't see adults with cerebral palsy in that clinic. I felt like we had just rolled all the way out the van, and I didn't know what we were going to do. I was pretty mad. I called the doctor. I called the physical therapist herself. I called my husband, who had to listen to me rant for a while as I told him that he better get on the phone and call some people too. We were pretty livid. We spent the next 2 months calling doctors. Nobody had an answer. Nobody knew what physical therapists would see us. The physical therapists that saw adults were sports injuries or stroke victims. They weren't taught how to take care of Benjamin, and nobody knew where we could go. After 2 months, we finally got an appointment, and Benjamin sees a lovely physical therapist named Alyssa in the outpatient rehab unit of our children's hospital. My 19-year-old college sophomore rolls past the brightly colored mats and the Elmo toys to do physical therapy. And it's working fine, but I have a feeling this is not a long-term solution, and that there's another switch we're going to have to find pretty soon down the road. Unfortunately for Benjamin, medical needs were not the biggest stumbling block for his transition into adulthood. He'd only been in school for a week, taking classes, when he started trying to navigate the campus by himself. I think probably some cortical vision stuff was going on. He was walking across campus with a girl, of course, and she looks at him and says, can we cross the street here? And he has no depth perception. He assumed she wouldn't ask him if he could go off the edge of a curb, but she did, and he couldn't tell, so he blindly followed her. His foot plates were the only thing that kept him from landing on his face. They caught the brunt, his little feet caught the brunt of that 300-pound wheelchair, plus Benjamin. By the time I could get on the scene, he was surrounded by really cute girls who were worried about him. I told him there were way better ways to get attention. A lot of security, a lot of college administrators. I began to make phone calls, called the ADA compliance officer on the campus, and I demanded that they get better ramps. I was looking for all the switches, right, that might make Benjamin independent on his campus. When we got better ramps and students were parking in them and the mail delivery guy was parking in them and professors were parking in them, I called the dean. When he didn't accomplish anything, I called the president of the university, and I told him I needed it repaired. I got an email from the president of the university after a long weekend off where he had the maintenance staff go around and repaint every single ramp on campus. We were looking for the switches to help Benjamin be successful. I was spending all my days there. If your child drives off a curb, you're really not going to trust that anybody's going to know how to help him. So even with better ramps, I parked on that campus for the rest of his freshman year. I would get him between classes. I'd met his toileting needs. I got him lunch, picked him up and took him home. And by the end of the school year, I'm pretty sure I was chanting, I think I can, right? I think I can. We still knew we didn't have all the switches in place. It wasn't independent for mom to be hanging out on the college campus. I mean, I'm pretty cool, but I'm not that cool. And it wasn't a neat thing for him. In April, Benjamin took a big step toward independence, and he demanded that when they made his fall schedule, that they fix it so that he didn't have to travel as far around campus. So he began to voice his own need for support and what that needed to look like. And I was really proud that the illumination he'd received was helping him flip his own switches and find the things he needed. In August, we finally got word from the state of Mississippi that he qualified for personal care attendance. And last week, we finally hired a staff of 3 personal care attendants that work for Benjamin, that Benjamin can have drive him around and dress him and take him to cool college things. And he's pretty excited about what the future looks like. This is what I want you to see. Transitioning to adulthood is going to look different for every single person in this room. I just told you about my 3 children, and it looked different for all of them, and they were born simultaneously. Our job, though, as parents, is to help our child find optimum independence. We have to figure out what optimum independence looks like for our kiddos. And then we're going to help them reach it. We're going to help them push it. It's going to require fiddling for the right switches. Which program, which job, which college is going to best suit their needs as they strive for their own level of independence. Which clinic, which doctor, which team of professionals are going to be able to meet their health care needs. And what does that look like? That's our job as parents, to help them find that. It's going to require a mountain climbing effort to push your child into independence. And it might require some outside illumination. There might be some people you need to reach out to that can give you their vision to help you see what you need to see to help your child. But just like my 3 tiny babies had to eventually, eat solid food, our kids are going to become adults. And we have to figure out how to help them transition. I'm going to tell you that I think the world with my 3 children in it as adults and the world with your children as adults is going to be a world I want to live in. So let's figure out the switches we need to get it done, okay?